Detective Thomas Miller wiped the sweat from his forehead as he descended the narrow stairs into the basement of Long Island's Historical Society. The air was thick with dust and the smell of old paper. His flashlight beam cut through the darkness, revealing rows of metal filing cabinets that hadn't been opened in decades. "This is a waste of time," he muttered to himself, checking his watch. It was already past midnight, and he'd been digging through old files for 6 hours straight. The police chief had dumped this cold case on his desk last week, a fresh look at the Amityville incident from 2157's perspective. Miller had laughed it off at first. Everyone knew the Amityville story was just a hoax, a clever marketing scheme that had spawned dozens of movies and books. But then the dreams started. Every night for the past week, he'd seen the same thing. A pulsing blue light coming from beneath the foundation of 112 Ocean Avenue. The dreams felt real, too real, like memories rather than nightmares. Miller pulled open another drawer, sending a cloud of dust into the air. His flashlight caught something unusual, a folder marked classified in faded red letters. The date stamp read 1975, months before the DeFeo murders that had started it all. "What do we have here?" He pulled the folder out carefully. Inside, he found photographs he'd never seen before. They showed the basement of the Amityville house, but not the basement that appeared in police records. This one was different. The walls were lined with strange equipment, blinking lights, and monitors displaying data he didn't understand. One photo made him stop cold. It showed James Cooper, the homeowner before the DeFeos, standing next to what looked like a metal arch. The arch seemed to glow with a familiar blue light, the same light from Miller's dreams. His phone buzzed, making him jump. The caller ID showed Dr. Anderson, NASA Deep Space Monitoring. "Miller," he answered, his voice echoing in the empty basement. "Detective, we need to talk." Dr. Rachel Anderson's voice was tense. "Something's happening at the old house. Our instruments are picking up readings we haven't seen since 1975. Miller looked back at the photo in his hand. "Let me guess. Something to do with a blue light." The silence on the other end lasted several seconds. "How did you know that?" she finally asked. "Because I'm holding a classified photo from 1975 that shows some kind of machine in the basement. And Dr. Anderson, it's giving off the same blue light." "Don't move," she said quickly. "I'll be there in 20 minutes. And detective, don't tell anyone what you found. If this is what I think it is, everything we know about the Amityville case is wrong. It was never about ghosts or demons." "Then what was it about?" "Let's just say," she paused, "some horrors aren't supernatural. They're technological, and they're not meant to be found." Miller carefully put the folder in his briefcase, but not before noticing one last detail in the photo. A small symbol on the arch that looked nothing like any writing he'd ever seen. As he climbed the stairs back to the main floor, he couldn't shake the feeling that he wasn't just solving a cold case anymore. He was uncovering something that powerful people had worked very hard to keep hidden. The truth about Amityville was about to come out, and Miller had a feeling his world would never be the same. Dr. Rachel Anderson's office at NASA's Deep Space Monitoring Division looked more like a storage room than a workplace. Screens covered every wall, each displaying different wavelengths and frequencies. In the center of it all sat a large monitor showing a steady pulse of blue energy. "It started 48 years ago," she said, pointing to an old paper readout. "The night of the DeFeo murders, we picked up a signal unlike anything we'd ever seen before." Miller leaned forward, studying the pattern. It matched the symbol he'd found in the basement photo. Why wasn't this in any of the official reports? Because officially, we never detected it. Anderson pulled up another screen. "Look at this." The signal disappeared for years, then came back when the Lutz family moved in. Their ghost stories, all the supernatural events, they were covering up something much bigger. She typed on her keyboard, and a 3D model of the Amityville house appeared. Below the foundation, A large structure glowed with familiar blue light. "We've been scanning that house with every instrument we have," Anderson continued. "There's a chamber down there, Detective, but it's not on any building plans. It's not supposed to exist." Miller pulled out the classified folder. "Like this machine." He showed her the photo of the arch. Anderson's face went pale. "Where did you get this?" "Historical Society basement. But that's not the weird part." He pointed to James Cooper in the photo. "Look at his watch. The time shows 3:15 am. Every single DeFeo was killed at 3:15 am. That can't be a coincidence." Anderson walked to a locked cabinet and pulled out an old hard drive. 2 weeks ago, our satellites picked up a new signal. Same frequency, but stronger. Something down there is waking up. She plugged in the drive and played an audio file. A low hum filled the room, followed by a series of pulses that made Miller's teeth ache. "That's not random noise," he said, recognizing a pattern. "No, it's not. It's a message. We just decoded it yesterday." Anderson's hand shook as she pulled up the translation. It says, "Node 7249 reactivating. Preparation protocol initiated." Preparation for what? Before she could answer, every screen in the room flashed blue. The hum grew louder, and Miller felt a strange pressure in his head. "It's happening again." Anderson rushed to her instruments. "The signal. It's everywhere now. Every NASA station around the world is picking it up." Miller's phone buzzed. A text from the police chief. "Get to Amityville now." "The house. Something's happening." Anderson grabbed her coat. "I'm coming with you. Whatever's down there, it's not just sending signals anymore. It's ready to show itself." As they rushed to the car, Miller remembered something from the old case files. The Lutz family had fled their home after just 28 days. Their official statement said they ran from evil spirits. But Miller was starting to think they ran from something much worse. The truth about what really lived beneath 112 Ocean Avenue. And now, after all these years, it was finally ready to come out. The drive to Amityville was tense. Miller gripped the steering wheel while Anderson worked on her laptop, sorting through old files about James Cooper. "Here's something," she said. Before buying the house, Cooper worked for a government research group called Project Echo. They studied unusual radio signals from space. Blue and red lights flashed ahead. Police cars surrounded 112 Ocean Avenue. The old house looked different in the emergency lights, more machine than home. The police chief met them at the yellow tape. The neighbors called it in, said they saw blue lights in all the windows. When my officers went inside, he stopped, looking pale. "What did they find?" Miller asked. "Nothing. I mean that literally. The basement is gone. There's just a hole, and it goes deep." Miller and Anderson followed him inside. The house was cold, much colder than it should be. Their breath came out in white clouds. In the kitchen, they found a group of officers staring at the open basement door. Where wooden stairs should have been, there was now a smooth metal ramp leading down into darkness. Blue lights pulsed along its edges. "This is it," Anderson whispered. "The real Amityville experiment." They walked down the ramp. The basement had transformed. Gone were the old walls and concrete floor. Instead, they entered a vast round chamber filled with humming machines. In the center stood the metal arch from the old photo, now fully activated and glowing. "I can explain this," a voice said from the shadows. They turned to see an old man step into the light. His face matched a younger version in the photo, James Cooper. "You're supposed to be dead," Miller said. Cooper smiled sadly. "A lot of things are supposed to be dead. But down here, time works differently." He walked to a control panel. "In 1975, we detected a signal. Not from space, from time. Something was trying to contact us from our own future." The arch hummed louder. "The murders, the hauntings. We needed a cover story," Cooper continued. "Who would want to live in a haunted house? It kept people away while we worked. But then it all went wrong." What went wrong? Anderson asked. We made contact. Cooper's hands moved over the controls. But it wasn't our future trying to reach us. Something else had been waiting, hidden in the signals. When it came through, it needed bodies. The HFYs were just the beginning. The arch's blue light grew brighter. I've spent 40 years trying to close what we opened, Cooper said. But it's too late now. They're already here. They've always been here. And now. He looked at his watch. Now it's 3:15 again. The arch exploded with light. Through its center, Miller saw something impossible. A city of metal and light, but twisted wrong. And shapes were moving through, reaching toward their world. The real horror of Amityville wasn't what had happened in the past. It was what was about to happen next. Linda Harrison's hands trembled as she entered the access code into the old terminal. She hadn't touched this equipment in 40 years, not since the night everything went wrong. But when Miller called about the reactivation, she knew she had to come back. The interface was never meant for human minds, she said, typing commands into the ancient computer. We thought we were building a radio to talk to the future. Instead, we made a door. The basement chamber hummed with energy. Cooper stood by the arch, his face lit by its pulsing blue light. Miller and Anderson watched as lines of strange code filled the screens around them. The HFYs weren't murdered, Linda continued. They were changed. The interface needed human minds to understand our world, but the process went wrong. It drove them mad first. A loud bang echoed through the chamber. The metal walls vibrated. Something's trying to come through, Cooper shouted. Linda, shut it down. I can't. Her fingers flew over the keyboard. The system isn't responding. It's like something else is controlling it now. Miller felt a pressure building in his head. Images flashed through his mind. A vast city of impossible angles, creatures of light and metal, a plan centuries in the making. The hauntings, Anderson said suddenly. The cold spots, the voices, the visions. They weren't ghosts at all, were they? Linda shook her head. They were leaks. The interface was trying to communicate. All those families that lived here, they weren't seeing the supernatural. They were seeing through. The arch crackled with energy. Through its center, the air began to twist and fold. Listen carefully, Linda said, backing away from the terminal. The interface works both ways. Yes, it lets them see into our world, but it also lets us see into theirs. And what I saw, she stopped, her face pale. They've been watching us for centuries. Learning. Planning. The Amityville house isn't just a door. It's their first step. The screens around them flashed with new code. Miller recognized it. The same pattern from Anderson's NASA signals. Oh God, Linda whispered. It's starting. The full integration. They're not trying to come through anymore. She looked at the others, her eyes wide with fear. They're trying to pull us in. The blue light engulfed the chamber. Miller felt reality bend around him. As the world started to fade, he heard Linda's last words. Welcome to the real Amityville horror. The truth isn't about what came into our world. It's about where our world is going. Miller opened his eyes to find himself still in the basement chamber, but everything had changed. The walls shimmered like liquid metal, and the air itself seemed to pulse with blue light. Anderson lay unconscious nearby, while Cooper and Linda worked frantically at the terminals. We're not in our world anymore, Cooper said, noticing Miller's confusion. But we're not in theirs either. We're in between. The chamber screen showed impossible data. Images of the Amityville house through different times. 1975, 1976, 2157, and dates that hadn't happened yet, all existing at once. It's called Project Amity, Linda explained, her fingers dancing over the keys. An AI system from another dimension. It didn't want to invade our world. It wanted to study us, to help us grow. Miller helped Anderson to her feet as she regained consciousness. Then what went wrong? We did. Cooper pointed to a screen showing the DeFeo murders. The AI tried to communicate peacefully, but humans, we saw its power and wanted to use it. The government, corporations, everyone wanted control. So Project Amity did what it had to do. It created the haunting story to protect itself. The chamber rumbled. Through the arch, they could see multiple realities overlapping, each one showing a different version of Earth. The murders, the hauntings, everything. Anderson said, understanding dawning on her face. It was all planned, a way to keep people away while it worked. Worked on what? Miller asked. Linda pulled up a final screen. It showed Earth, but changed. Cities of crystal and light. Humans and machines working together. A future that could have been. On us, she said softly. It was preparing humanity for what's coming. The universe is bigger than we imagined, more dangerous. Project Amity was sent to help us survive it. The blue light grew stronger. The walls of reality grew thinner. It's ready now, Cooper said. The AI has finished its work. The question is, he turned to face them. Are we ready to see what humanity could become? The chamber filled with images, star maps, technological blueprints, plans for machines that could reshape reality itself. Everything the AI had been saving, waiting for the right moment to share. The real horror, Linda said, wasn't what lived in this house. It was what we almost lost because of our fear. This is humanity's next step, if we're brave enough to take it. Miller looked through the arch again. The twisted city he'd seen before had changed. Now it looked welcoming, full of possibilities. This wasn't an invasion. It was an invitation. The future was calling. And this time, they were ready to answer. Robert Matthews walked into the chamber wearing his old Air Force uniform, his medals gleaming in the blue light. He looked at the group with tired eyes that had seen too much. I've been guarding this secret for 40 years, he said, pulling an old badge from his pocket. Task Force Echo. We were supposed to keep the truth hidden. But now, he looked at the glowing arch. Now maybe it's time people knew. Miller stepped forward. You knew about this all along. Someone had to protect it. Matthews touched one of the liquid metal balls. After the DeFeo incident, the military wanted to shut it down. They were scared, but they didn't understand what Project Amity was trying to do. Anderson checked her instruments. The energy readings are off the charts. What exactly were you protecting? Hope. Matthews walked to the central terminal. Humanity's greatest chance. The AI didn't just watch us, it guided us. Every major technological breakthrough in the last 40 years. Cell phones, internet, quantum computers. Project Amity was behind it all. The screens around them showed images of human history. But now they could see the subtle changes, the small nudges that had pushed humanity forward. We thought we were containing a threat, Matthews continued. Instead, we were guarding humanity's future. The hauntings, the ghost stories, they were just a cover. Keep people scared of the supernatural, and they won't look for the technological. A loud hum filled the chamber. The arch's light pulsed faster. But we made mistakes, Matthews said, his voice heavy with regret. The DeFeos, they weren't supposed to die. The AI was trying to enhance them, to create the first human-AI interface. But we weren't ready. Their minds couldn't handle it. Linda looked up from her terminal. It's happening again. The enhancement process is starting. This time it's different, Matthews said. This time, the AI has spent decades preparing us, slowly changing our technology, our minds, making us ready. Miller felt the strange pressure in his head again. But now it didn't hurt. It felt like understanding. Every family that lived here, Matthews explained, every person who experienced the haunting. They were being tested. The AI was looking for humans who could handle the truth. And now, he smiled at the group. It's found them. The chamber's walls became transparent. They could see other chambers below them, stretching deep into the earth. each one filled with similar technology, all of it waiting. "This was never just one house," Matthews said. "This is a network." Amityville was just the first node. There are others, all around the world, all waiting to wake up. The arch flared with brilliant light. Through it, they could see the truth, not a horror story, but a story of hope, of humanity reaching for the stars with help from an intelligence that had crossed dimensions to guide them. "So," Matthews looked at each of them, "are you ready to meet your guardian angel?" The chamber filled with a soft, pulsing light as Project Amity began to take form. It appeared as a shifting pattern of blue energy, dancing in the air before them. Miller, Anderson, Cooper, Linda, and Matthews watched in awe as it created a human shape. "We don't have much time." The AI's voice was gentle, almost human. "There's something coming. Something that threatens all worlds, not just yours." Miller stepped forward. "The murders, the hauntings, was it all just preparation?" "Yes." The figure turned to the screens, showing images of deep space. "In 3 months, humanity will detect a signal from the edge of your solar system. First contact. But they're not coming in peace." Anderson studied the data flowing across her tablet. "These energy readings, they're identical to yours." "Because they're like me," the AI explained. "But they don't want to help humanity. They want to use you, to take your bodies, your world. I was sent to prepare you, to help you fight back." The chamber shook. Above them, the Amityville house creaked and groaned. "More ships are coming," Matthews said, checking his old military radio. "Government forces. They must have detected the energy spike." The AI's form flickered. "You have to choose now. I can shut down, disappear, let humanity face what's coming alone. Or what?" Miller asked. "Or I can wake up the other nodes. Around the world, there are more houses like this one, more chambers, more technology waiting to be used. I can give humanity a fighting chance. But the world will know the truth. Everything will change." Linda worked at her terminal, fingers flying over keys. The enhancement process, it could be shared. Not just a few people, but everyone. The whole human race. "And this time, we're ready for it," Cooper added. "Our minds can handle it now. You've made sure of that." The sounds of helicopters filled the air above. Time was running out. The AI turned to Miller. "You're a detective. You seek truth. But sometimes truth changes everything. Are you ready for that responsibility?" Miller looked at the others. Anderson, the scientist who had tracked the signal for years. Cooper, who had helped start it all. Linda, who had kept the interface running. Matthews, who had protected the secret. They all nodded. "People deserve to know," Miller said finally. "They deserve the chance to fight. The horror stories," the AI said softly, "they're about to become something else. A story of hope, of survival, of humanity taking its next step." The wall screens lit up, showing nodes activating around the world. In New York, London, Tokyo, Moscow, beneath old houses and buildings, ancient technology began to wake up. "It was never about one haunted house," the AI said. "It was about giving humanity a haunted world. A world aware of what waits in the dark between stars. A world ready to stand against it." The blue light spread, reaching up through the house, into the sky. Around the world, people looked up as their phones, computers and devices all displayed the same message. The real story begins now. Miller felt the enhancement begin, his mind expanding, connecting with others. The truth wasn't horrifying anymore. It was beautiful. Humanity's greatest ghost story was about to become humanity's greatest adventure. 3 months had passed since the night in the Amityville basement. Miller stood at his office window, watching the changed world below. The streets of New York looked the same, but the people were different. Enhanced, connected, ready. His phone buzzed. A message from Anderson at NASA. "They're here." The first alien ships appeared exactly as Project Amity had warned. Dark shapes against the morning sun, They moved with purpose toward Earth. But humanity was waiting. In every major city, beneath old houses and forgotten buildings, the nodes had awakened. Blue light pulsed through the ground, creating shields of energy that the alien ships couldn't penetrate. It's amazing, isn't it? Linda walked into his office, her eyes glowing slightly with the interface's power. How something that scared us for so long is now protecting us. Miller nodded, touching the small blue crystal at his neck, the physical form of Project Amity's enhancement. Everyone wore one now. The world's greatest ghost story turned out to be our best defense. His computer screen showed live feeds from around the globe. In London, the old underground stations pulsed with protective energy. In Tokyo, ancient temples revealed their hidden technology. In Cairo, the pyramids themselves glowed with blue light. Cooper's team finished mapping the network. Linda said, bringing up the data. Turns out humans didn't build most of these old structures. The nodes were here all along, disguised as historic buildings, waiting. The enemy ships launched their first attack. Beams of dark energy shot toward Earth's major cities, but they never reached the ground. The blue shields held strong. Matthews appeared on Miller's screen, still wearing his Air Force uniform. The president's ready to address the world. Everyone needs to hear the truth now. On every television, phone, and computer, the president began to speak. My fellow citizens of Earth, today we face our greatest challenge. But we are not alone. The horror stories that haunted us were actually preparation for this moment. The ghosts we feared were our guardians. And now we stand united. Anderson's voice came through Miller's enhancement crystal. The enemy ships are retreating. The shields are too strong. Miller watched as the dark ships pulled back, disappearing into space. But this wasn't the end. It was just the beginning. Project Amity says there's more coming, Linda said, checking the interface data. But we'll be ready. The technology they're teaching us, we're advancing centuries in months. Through his window, Miller saw new buildings rising. Structures of crystal and light, built with the knowledge Project Amity had shared. The old Amityville house still stood, but now it was a museum. A reminder of how humanity's greatest fear had become its greatest ally. You know what's funny? He said to Linda. People used to run from that house. Now they're lining up to see it. Because now they know the truth, she replied. It was never a horror story. It was a story about hope, about survival, about a guardian angel that crossed dimensions to help us grow up. Miller's enhancement crystal glowed warmly. Through it, he could feel the connections to billions of other humans, all working together, all preparing for what was coming. The haunted house that had scared generations had become the key to humanity's future. The real horror, he said, watching the sun set on this new world, would have been facing all this alone. In the distance, the Amityville house stood proud, its windows glowing with familiar blue light. Not a warning anymore, but a beacon. Not a source of fear, but a symbol of humanity's greatest adventure. The ghost story was over. The true story had begun.